Each autumn, as trees release their leaves in a kind of slow-motion golden snowfall, many people instinctively reach for rakes and blowers. Clearing the lawn feels almost ceremonial, an annual signal that the seasons are turning. In many neighborhoods, a tidy, leaf-free lawn is considered a sign of good maintenance, responsible ownership, and even social harmony. Yet beneath those scattered leaves is an entire planet of activity that most people never see. What appears to be seasonal clutter is actually one of the most important ecological layers in a temperate landscape. This video explores why leaf removal became such a widespread habit, what leaf litter actually does for the ecosystem, and how common cleanup methods can inadvertently harm the very wildlife and soil systems that allow yards, gardens, and forests to thrive. Modern leaf removal habits are rooted as much in cultural history as in practical concerns. The idea of a perfectly manicured lawn originates centuries ago with European estates, where vast green spaces served as symbols of wealth. Maintaining acres of short, uniform grass required land, labor, and dedication, luxuries not available to most people. Over time, the lawn became part of the aspirational landscape of suburban America as well. By the mid-20th century, a smooth, trim lawn had become synonymous with stability and domestic pride. In that context, fallen leaves came to represent disorder. Even today, a lawn sprinkled with leaves is often viewed as untidy. Even though in natural ecosystems, leaf accumulation is not a flaw, it's a fundamental process. Tradition, social expectations, and aesthetic preferences all play a role in why people remove leaves. Now, there are also practical concerns. Wet leaves can become slippery and hazardous on walkways. Certain turf grasses suffer if buried beneath thick mats of decaying material that blocks sunlight and airflow. And leaves blow around easily, gathering in gutters and causing inconveniences that many homeowners are understandably eager to avoid. These are actual considerations, but they don't tell the whole story, because leaves offer ecological functions that far outweigh their inconveniences. When a leaf drops from a tree, it doesn't cease to matter. It begins an entirely new phase of usefulness. As it decomposes, the leaf slowly releases the nutrients it gathered during the growing season back into the soil. These nutrients, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, are essential to plant life. Forests, which are never raked or cleared, remain fertile year after year, precisely because their leaves decompose naturally. In a sense, leaves are nature's versions of slow-release fertilizer. They also improve soil structure by adding organic matter. This organic layer helps soil remain moisture, reduce erosion during heavy rains, and allow the soil to hold essential nutrients rather than losing them through runoff. Decomposing leaves even helps sequester carbon in soils, storing it in a more stable form rather than letting it return quickly to the atmosphere. Fun fact, earthworms are not native to much of northern United States. After the last ice age, many regions had no earthworms at all. As non-native earthworms spread afterward, leaf litter became one of their primary food sources. These worms, for better or for worse, became major contributors to the decomposition process that used to be dominated by insects and fungi. Leaf litter is one of the most important and most overlooked habitat for insects. Many pollinators rely on fallen leaves to survive winter. Solitary bees, for instance, often nest in the soil underneath leaf covers, and they rely on the insulating layers to protect them from freezing temperatures. Certain butterflies and moths spend the winter as cocoons, chrysalises, or as dormant adults, tucked safely among the leaves. When people rake or blow leaves into piles destined for disposal, they often remove entire generations of these insects before they even get a chance to emerge in the spring. Fireflies, beloved by children and adults alike, spend up to 2 years of their lives as larvae, living in leaf litter. They're ferocious little hunters, feeding on snails and worms. When we remove leaves, we don't just tidy a yard. We strip away the habitat that fireflies require. It's one of several reasons firefly populations have been declining in many regions. Beyond pollinators and fireflies, leaf litters host an astounding diversity of decomposers and microarthropods. Millipedes, beetles, larvae, springtails, and even tiny soil mites all begin the process of breaking down organic matter. They also form the base of a rich food web that supports birds, amphibians, and mammals. Removing leaves disrupts a biological system that has existed for over millions of years. As insects tear leaves into smaller fragments, microorganisms take over. Bacteria and fungi break down plant fibers, releasing nutrients and forming humus, the dark, rich material that signals fertile soil. Certain fungi, including mycorrhizal species, form networks that connect plant roots and allow them to exchange nutrients. these fungal threads can spread entire neighborhoods. There's even research suggesting that fungal networks help plants warn each other of pest attacks, almost like a botanical early alert system. These networks depend on stable soil moisture and organic cover, exactly what leaf litter provides. Removing the leaves accelerates soil drying, increases temperature fluctuation, and weakens the entire microbial community. Amphibians such as salamanders, newts, and frogs rely heavily on leaf litter. They lose moisture easily and require damp, insulated environments to survive the winter. Leaf layers help regulate soil temperatures and prevent the ground from freezing too deeply. Small mammals, including chipmunks, shrews, and mice, also use the leaf litter for insulation and nesting materials. Even certain birds, such as thrushes, towies, and juncos, depend on leaf litter as a foraging ground. They flip leaves with quick practice movements to uncover insects hiding underneath. In a fully cleaned yard, these food sources disappear. Raking seems harmless, but when leaves are bagged and removed from the property, the ecosystem loses both habitat and nutrients. What once would have fed next year's soil becomes waste. Many of those bags end up in landfills, where leaves decompose without oxygen and generate methane, a greenhouse gas many times more potent than carbon dioxide. The loss of habitat is significant. An entire winter's population of overwintering insects, spiders, amphibians, and microorganisms can be removed in a single afternoon of tidying. While some cleanup is appropriate, especially on sidewalks and areas where leaves pile too thickly, most yards do not require the level of removal commonly preferred. Leaf blowers, especially gas-powered ones, introduce additional environmental problems. Their noise levels regularly exceed 90 decibels, a volume that disrupts birds' communication and stresses wildlife. Birds rely heavily on vocal signals to establish territory, coordinate flocks, and warn of danger. Prolonged noise can interrupt these behaviors and, even in humans, cause hearing damage. The engines themselves emit nitrogen oxides, hydrocarbons, and fine particulate matter. Some older gas blowers produce more pollution in an hour than a car traveling dozens or even hundreds of miles. The physical force of the airstream, meanwhile, dislodges insects, strips away protective soil layers, and scatters small organisms that cannot withstand the blast. Even electric blowers can cause ecological disruption if used aggressively. A single yard cleared of leaves may not seem like a big loss, but when entire neighborhoods perform the same ritual, the cumulative effects are dramatic. Pollinator habitats become fragmented, soil loses organic matter, and the supporting structure of local food webs weakens. Many species, especially insects and amphibians, rely on continuous habitat across landscapes. When every yard is cleared, the small wilderness that used to exist in residential areas essentially disappears. The good news is that environmentally friendly yard practices does not require abandoning neatness. Instead, they call for thoughtful balance. One of the simplest approaches is to designate certain areas of the yard where leaves can remain. Spaces beneath shrubs, edges along fences, and garden beds all make excellent habitat zones. These patches of leaf cover may be small, but collectively they offer crucial refuge to wildlife. Practicing targeted cleanup also helps. Removing leaves from walkways, driveways, and spots where they accumulate too heavily is sensible, but allowing moderate leaf cover in less trafficked areas preserves biodiversity without sacrificing functionality or appearance. For those who rely on tools, gentler equipment makes a meaningful difference. Electric blowers are cleaner and quieter than gas-powered ones, and using lower settings can avoid disrupting soil-dwelling organisms. Many people find that a simple rake, used lightly, does the job with far less ecological disruption. Finally, adding native plants to the yard naturally reduces the pressure to remove leaves. Native species evolved alongside fall leaf shedding and thrive in it. Their deep root systems, varied structures, and seasonal cycle creates pockets of habitat that support pollinators and reduces the need for chemical fertilizers and intense cleanup. A layer of fallen leaves may look like seasonal clutter, but it is one of the most important natural systems operating quietly in the background of our landscapes. It shelters insects, feeds the soil, protects small animals, and anchors complex networks of microorganisms. When we remove leaves without considering these roles, we unintentionally dismantle a functioning ecosystem. Yet this doesn't mean we must abandon the idea of a well-maintained yard. It simply means shifting perspectives. Tidy does not have to mean sterile. A carefully tended yard can still support the wildlife and ecological cycles that make our neighborhoods vibrant, diverse, and resilient. By by leaving some areas wild and using gentler tools, we invite nature back into the spaces we manage. The next time leaves start to fall, remember that they're doing more than just covering your yard. Beneath them is a small community of insects, animals, and tiny organisms that rely on that layer for food and shelter. What may look like a mess is actually an important part of nature that works best when you leave it alone. Okay, sorry about that. But if you like this video, feel free to subscribe. And also leave any ideas for future videos in the comments down below if you want. I guess you don't have to. But anyways, I'll catch y'all later.